back to
Yeah, I know you're on
Wisconsin
West
talk.
Coast time over there, so a little later, but it's all good. But yeah, I mean, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Joe Chapman, and I am a graduating MSA student this year, part of the Symposium panel. Just really, leave it up to us to create a panel on Cinco de Mayo. So hopefully all of you guys have a little marg at home or something like that, or plan to get one afterwards. But just wanted to thank you all for taking the time for these 5 and 10-year panels. Also, congratulations obviously goes out to class of 16 and class of 11. I know it seems probably like yesterday since it's been since you guys have stumbled down the bricks, as a lot of us did yesterday with our bar crawl. But, just really want to thank you all for being here, taking the time. Quick run of show for everybody who's in here. How it's going to work is that we're going to start with 2 panels from the class of 16. First one's going to be the professional and agency space. Second one's going to talk about college athletics. And then we're going to follow that with the class of 2011 panels. So that will be development and partnerships, and then marketing and strategy. We have questions already sent prepared for our panelists, but if anybody else has any others that they would like to ask, feel free to throw them into the chat or raise your hand on Zoom. I think we've all used this enough to where we can probably figure that out too. But so as we get in to start with the 5-year panels, just wanted to first introduce Travis Misner. Big world traveler here, Travis. I'm not going to lie. I mean, go from Kalamazoo, Michigan, where he's the manager of corporate partnerships for the Growlers, and then followed that as being an adjunct professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and now is currently residing in Charlotte, where he is the manager of partnership development for the Hornets. So, Travis, I'm going to leave it to you. Take it away. Tell us or poke fun at your classmates and have fun.
Thanks, Joe. And you said it. Congratulations to us surviving for 5 years. Yeah, it's a big accomplishment for all of us. All jokes aside, I'm really excited to be asked and honored to be asked to be able to lead this today with everybody. Some people I hold very close to my heart, and people I think very highly of. Everybody that will go through here today, and hopefully have some jokes. I think this first half of the panel is a good warm up for everybody else. Loosen it up a little bit. But it's truly, as I think back and what our symposium looked like in class of 16. Obviously, it's a little different now. I know we had all hoped that this was last year was going to be the only digital symposium, and obviously this year, make the best with what we got. But I know that everybody that I've talked to in our class is excited about hitting the bricks in Athens, celebrating next year and in the future. So with that, I'll gladly give a brief introduction for those who are on the panel. I know the first half is going to be more focused on professional sports and the agency life, and then the second half will be more on the college athletics side. So I'm going to start with the first half first. I know Ryan, Becky, and Kaylee I'll introduce as we kind of lead into the second portion. But for now, we'll start. Todd Moore is a digital producer for the Jordan brand account at Owen Jones and Partners. We also have Kareem Fatih, who's the vice president of digital at Sport5. And then Brett Bauer, my former roommate, vice president, partnership, hospitality sales for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So that is a lot of titles that I didn't think we would be this far in 5 years. So congratulations to you guys. I know there's been a lot of work put in on the back end for everybody and a lot of stops along the way. So I'm excited to kind of dive in here. But first, I know I read your titles, but I would love for you guys to give a brief kind of intro to what you do, what your role is. And Todd, let's start with you. I know you being on the West Coast have a bit of a different role than what's in traditional sports.
Do you think that's because I'm on the West Coast, or okay?
Yep.
No,
khaki,
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't do enough advocating for title fluffing. Had I known, Kareem and Brett were both going to have vice president titles by now, I might have advocated for myself a little stronger here. But happy to get into it. First and foremost, I did want to say, with with the panel choice here to the current class, I'd long suspected when I was when we were current students that there's always like one panel member that every classmate is watching and saying like, I don't know how they picked that person instead of me. And I really appreciate Joe, you and the rest of the class making it really clear who in my class is saying that about by including me on the panel this year. So big ups on making sure that there was no debate about that. But in terms of what I do today, I am the lead producer or project manager for our Jordan brand account at Owen Jones and Partners. And what we do is we are sort of the production shop for everything that Jordan does on their direct-to-consumer digital channels. So we are supporting their content marketing on Jordan.com, Nike apps, sneakers, email, as well as their blog where they post editorial content. So on a day-to-day function, it changes often, but the best way to explain it is we're partnering with multiple Jordan functions, whether it's their brand design teams that do the creative concepts and the photography and work directly with athletes, and their retail marketing functions that are focusing on what are the upcoming products in the exact mix of those things. And our strategy teams help kind of put those things together into a coherent story each season. And then our design teams are the people that will take, thousands of photographs, videos, different forms of content. And they are, designers that are platform experts. So they take things that they're the beautiful creative concepts and make them like platform right for Jordan.com, Nike apps, sneakers, email, Instagram. And so translating whatever photography you get of Zion Williamson and making it work for Nike.com. So it changes every season. It's a really fun challenge to work with those different concepts and really talented creatives, across Jordan. And then obviously the talented team I work with, and definitely keeps me guessing every day and constantly learning new things. So it's been a fun journey from, Trailblazers and professional basketball to this. So I'm not sure I would have traced that in my time in Athens. And I hope, if nothing else, it's just a testament to any of you students today that maybe don't know exactly where your journey is going to take you, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So with that, Travis, I'll cede it to you to go on to the next.
Yeah, and for Todd and my sake, keep buying Jordan shoes. That's what keeps the lights on for us. So
buy the Zion ones. I don't care what you think of them. Just they're $120. It's a very reasonable get-in price for a performance shoe. So if you can, that'd be great.
Yeah, help us out. I'm going to throw it to Brett next out in Pittsburgh.
Well, can I make a plug for Pirates tickets? If you guys want to buy Pirates tickets, please, or sponsorships for that matter, if we're just going to be self-promoting here. So Brett Bauer, Vice President, Partnerships and Hospitality Sales, lead the sales effort on the Pirates. 2 months in now. Before this, had 16-month stint with Monumental Sports Entertainment out in DC. The Capitals, Wizards, Mystics, some esports piece of it. So interesting transition during the pandemic, and interesting to going from completely remote work to now 100% in the office. So, but it's been a breath of fresh air being around people again and having that spark and that energy. So really what we're focused on right now is closing out 21 as best as we can. And we're starting the 22 season from the partnership and hospitality sales side. So under our umbrella, we have premium, our suites, and then partnerships all under one department versus segmenting all those out with different silos. So it creates a more collaborative environment. And it's not just, hey, that's a suite lead, that's a partnership lead. It's one lead. And we're working it the best way that we possibly can. So again, 2 months in, learning a lot, just understanding and evaluating what we have and putting a strategy together for 22 and beyond.
And I just saw a question in the chat. Does Pittsburgh not accept collars on shirts?
Just as much as they don't on the West Coast. So I took my inspiration from Todd. So you can thank him for that one. As many times as I got blasted by Todd in grad school, I'm trying to be on his good side. So that's my motivation.
All right, we'll go to Kareem next in New York with Sport 5.
Cool. Unlike Brett, I'm not going to try to sell you something. But on a serious note, yeah, my name is Kareem. I work for Sport 5, a global sports marketing agency. Going into my fifth year at the agency, started upon graduation in 2016. Initially moved to our Paris office, where I spent 2 years working on African football and Asian football, and then transferred to New York office in summer of 2018, where I'm overseeing our digital business efforts. So that goes from fan engagement, content creation, business development, as well as all things digital activations. We work with brands, right holders, media platforms, with the goal of really amplifying the fan engagement across all forms. As long as fans are happy, everyone wins. So that's something that we do. Another focus that we have been highly active over the past 2 years is internationalization. So working with a lot of European and Asian properties trying to break into the US market, but also vice versa. A lot of the US properties, NBA, NFL, NHL, trying to go to Europe and Asia. So working closely with them, obviously utilizing our agency's global presence and outreach across Europe, Asia, North America, Africa, and South America, Australia, basically everywhere.
No big deal.
Sounds like it scales pretty well.
Just a little bit.
All right. Well, I'm going to get right into it here with the questions. I think there's a couple different themes here. One is what you did when you were on campus and some of the things you took away from OU. And then kind of the other side is really more strategies and how the industry has shifted a little bit in the pandemic and how you personally may have had to make some adjustments in your career. So I'll start with Athens first and OU. And I know that with it being the fifth year, there's been a lot of conversation amongst people in our class and kind of reminiscing about different memories on Court Street or in the apartments or in class or all the above on trips. And I'm curious, that the first question to kick it off, when you're talking about the network of people, and I think the three of us specifically, work in industries where you have to have that network. You have to have people to build on and know and learn from. Most importantly, learn from to help you kind of take those next steps in your career. So, Kareem, I'll keep it with you. I'll start with you with this first one. But how has that network, the Ohio family, how has that impacted or benefited you in your career? And then, I guess on the one side, while you were in school, how did you use that? And on the other side, how have you used it in the 5 years post-graduation?
Yeah, I think the network is, which everyone obviously knows, is one of the core competencies of the program, and just utilizing the alumni who graduated throughout the past 60 plus years has been an immense thing that kind of helped kickstart my career. During time in Athens, I did a lot of part-time volunteering, internships, graduate assistantships, utilizing the network. Tom Hunt at DC United, Columbus Crew. We did a project for LAFC with Corey Breton. We did a bunch of capstone projects through the capstone end of year in New York trip, which was definitely amazing. And just trying to experience all of that was humbling, but at the same time, great a learning experience, but also great in terms of networking and building connections that can outlast once you graduate. And upon getting into the industry and really like working, that network is always an asset that you can rely on, and that's something that everyone stresses on upon graduation during your time in Athens, and it goes on until you eventually retire. And that's something that for the current students and for the past students as well is something that they know, and you can always reach out to an alum, no matter how senior that person is. He's probably going to answer your email or pick up your call or catch up for coffee in person. So I'd say the network has been a great resource for me personally, and something that everyone should definitely rely on.
Todd, I know that when you came to Ohio, you were coming again from Oregon and then ended up going back after finishing and going and really kind of going headfirst into wanting to be with Nike and getting into that world on the West Coast. So how did you use that network before we finished? And then I know you probably, out of all of us, have probably done one of the better jobs doing it out there and getting to know people and kind of helping build yourself up. How have you utilized that network?
It's funny, man. I think, my first job out here was with the Trailblazers, and I 100% owe that first job to the network. Shawnee Sullivan, Ohio alum that helped me get connected there. But to your point, Travis, we do have a great network of people that work at Nike. And more than anything, I saw the benefit of that in just sort of the interpersonal relationships, even if I never, I can't say that I ever leveraged anything, directly to like work directly with any of the current family members at Nike, but in an organization like that, or just even in an industry like ours, it's small, the interpersonal connections that the network offers to just be able to reach out to people and like benchmark and ask about opportunities or ask about things you're working on. And when I was making the transition over to Nike, it was a lot of talking to like Sean Pfeiffer and Mike Rose from the class of 2010, 2011. I don't know. I could never remember which year with those guys. And just asking like, is this a functional area that I want to be in? Like, is this, and getting a sense of where was the right area to be in and where there was going to be real opportunity. And the other parallel that I would draw there is actually when Kaylee Krizik and I used to work together with the Trailblazers, just the value of having people in the Ohio network that you can have honest conversations with about what's going on, and where you're at, whether it's, in your career or in your life, has been incredibly valuable to me. So I think just as important as it's going to be for like the actual, your career and the connections it can offer, don't undervalue making that happen just for the friendship element of it. Cause I think, that's probably where I would see I've had more value in my life, just the opportunity to have a beer with somebody and like, let's have an honest conversation about what's going on in the industry and our lives. Just actually valuing it on that level has been bigger for me.
Yeah. To that point, it's interesting because from the outside looking in, everything always looks great, right? You don't really know what you're getting into until you're into it. So having people to fall back on that you can ask real questions to and get real answers from. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Todd, because it's invaluable as you learn through and you see these things that you were told, and it makes it easier when you know what you're walking into, which isn't always fun. Brett, I know that you've done a great job utilizing the network and the directory and everything in your time. If anyone's ever been to National Sports Forum with Brett, just follow and watch him work the room because he knows everybody. So Brett, I already think I know what your answers are going to be, but tell me how you've utilized the network and how you've grown from on campus, what you did, and kind of how it's benefited you now.
Well, I appreciate that, Travis. Honestly, the network got me the job, and it was more my first job with the Penguins, but it was more the reputation than anything, than it was an alum reaching out or some of that other stuff. And there's definitely some of that, but the Penguins took a chance on me because the SVP had hired another Bobcat alum when he was at NASCAR. And so he's like, I had one really good guy from NASCAR, this guy coming from the same program, hopefully levels up. And I did, and it was John Nowicki. So he's much better than any of us here. So, but that like just getting into that first job with that type of value from the network and the reputation and everything itself was very eye-opening. And every year it seems like it gets stronger for me outside of the program. And the things that we're doing, again, on the personal connection, I'm not going to go over that piece, but I think credit to you, Travis, for putting a group together this past COVID for the last 6, 7, 8 months. We've got a group of sponsorship salespeople together from the OU network. We meet once a month, once every 6 weeks, and we have different speakers come in, OU or not. We talk about different leads. We talk about different activations. It's been a really strong support group in a really tough time for sponsorship sales too. Knowing people weren't necessarily spending money, and every conversation was how do we make good and how do we retain this revenue, which was exhausting. And it was unbelievable just to have a support group that goes through that process. I'd say the other one that's been really beneficial as you're looking at new jobs, as you're switching careers, as switching positions and roles, is to have, again, honest conversations and be like, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? What have you heard about them? and just being really open about it, because it's tough to obviously be open about that stuff with your direct reports or your supervisor that you're currently in. Your friends who aren't in the industry, they might not necessarily get it. It's fantastic to have that friend group and that connection to look at all these opportunities, or vice versa, throw you opportunities. I feel like I'm either tossing someone hey, this is what I found, this looks great for you, versus someone tossing me in previous roles, hey, this might make a lot of sense. It's from that standpoint alone, and just going through the process, it's very anxiety driven, changing jobs and changing careers as you get out of the program, and just to have that support system I don't know what I'd do without that. So that's been really appreciative.
Yeah, I really just wanted you to pump my tires a little bit.
I knew you set me up for it, so I had to. I absolutely had to.
So I want to keep it on theme with Athens. I think one of the questions here is really talking about a class that made an impact on you when you were on campus. I'm going to expand on that a little bit because I have a feeling everybody's probably going to have a similar answer. But when you're talking about lessons that you took away, I think Athens taught us a lot, and it's kind of twofold. It's lessons that you learn in the classroom, and then the lessons that you learned outside the classroom, and whether that's on campus and things with your classmates and in relationships or projects and things of that nature. So Todd, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Kareem and then Brett. What is something that you took away from Athens that whether it's a class or something else that has helped you get to where you are?
I think the class that I would tie it to, and then I'll see if I can connect the narrative to a larger picture, would be our capstone course in the second year, where we were working on consulting projects for leagues and teams in the New York area. But the broader lesson there that's been so helpful for me, especially as I've transitioned to an agency and consulting type role, is just that feeling of being dropped in the middle of someone else's business and trying to understand all the factors that go into that, and being able to offer coherent recommendations. So you get like in my current situation where it's like, all right, cool, you're supporting this brand, and now you need to understand their enterprise content management system. You need to understand how it interacts with Adobe Omniture. You need to understand their digital asset management system that's enterprise built. And then, you also need to be plugged in on like Google Analytics and what they're doing on social to drive traffic on their blog. And it's like, boy, that's a lot of inputs, and you got to be competent on that really quickly and understand their business and KPIs really quickly. And those capstone projects, RevGen is another great example of those situations where Athens and the program puts you in that situation. And at the time you're like, oh, this is really cool. I'm working with the NFL, or I'm working with the New York Jets, or whatever. But hopefully the takeaway is like, you're going to get dropped into situations in the industry and have to try to understand brands, or if you're on the other side, come to understand a team and what their objectives are really quickly, and try to start put two to two together into bigger picture things. And those lessons were super key. And the other takeaway there is working in those groups, like, and identifying the strengths that you maybe had versus your other team members might have had. And professionally, you're gonna fall into whatever your niche is, whether it's if you're the partnership salesperson, maybe you're Joshua Shire and you're the data guy, or whatever you find your specific where you really stand out. And that's going to like being able to find your fit, to build to those bigger picture things. It's going to help you advance. Like, great to be a jack of all trades, but also like find the things that you really stand out at and just like really kick ass at those. It's going to help move you along. So again, Athens did a great job dropping you in those kind of environments, and keep those things for resume items and keep those final projects if you're allowed to reference them, but definitely keep those lessons and try to apply them, because they're super, super relevant to whatever path you end up taking in the industry.
Yeah, I know personally, the Jets project was on my resume when I got my first job. That was referenced in that, specifically the fact that I had experience in that. And then even when I got hired with the Hornets, going from minor league summer collegiate baseball to the NBA, they wanted to see some sort of real application. And she even referenced the fact that I had that on there personally. So Kareem, I'm curious from your perspective, from a class or lesson or whatever, something that you took away from your time in Athens.
I think working in marketing, like the marketing classes that we took during our MBA year with Professor Wang and Professor Fall in the MSA year, were like spot on and helped a lot in terms of just enhancing our capabilities of understanding various things. But just saying what Todd has just mentioned around our capstone project was very, very useful, not just from an output or an end product perspective, but also from working, collaborating together as a class. And that's something that I've personally utilized. We've done projects for MLS, we've done projects for NBC Sports and Rock Nation. And those projects just opened the door for me in a lot of ways by building a lot of contacts that I later on utilized throughout my career. Although I was in Paris, I still made in touch with a lot of those people, and a lot of them have left and went to different places. But at the same time, it's been used to remaining in touch because, as I think Brett mentioned, the industry is quite small. So it's like second or third degree separation, and a lot of people end up being in places that you don't know where they go to. But one thing I'd also add is a lot of the time that we spent in Athens during the course of the 2 years, we've done a lot of different things, such as like working basketball games, football games, the graduate assistantships, the internships. This gives you an opportunity to kind of identify your niche and identify what you really want to do. I worked in ticket sales, for example, at DC United. I did like marketing for Columbus Crew, did research for LA FC, did some digital work here and there. And at that point, you kind of fine tune and narrow down what you really want to do. So that time in Athens is a golden opportunity that if you manage to utilize it correctly, it can help you on the long run in terms of career-wise aspirations.
Yeah, and bonus points to whoever in our class, in our MBA, told TQL to buy naming rights to a soccer stadium, because that really worked out. Brett, I guess we'll wrap this question with you on lessons in Athens or a class that you took that you still utilize.
Yeah, well, I learned to have really thick skin, because when you want to go to the Crystal on a Thursday, you get scoffed at pretty hard by Josh Shire. And even though Josh was the first one in line in the second semester of our second year, so he came around, but I had to have some thick skin through all of that, and also learned deck creative and deck making from Andy Szabo is just on another level. And I haven't been able to replicate his connective tissue statements and his connective tissue style of presentation. So that's something I'm always trying to strive for. I'd say that the one thing it did, I remember very, very clearly my Rev Gen project. We did it with the Blue Jackets, and your first sports project you do in the MSA. And we presented to AJ Poole and Jessica Smith and Ethan Saporito, all OU Bobcats. And we went in and we thought we did a good job. And they kicked all of our ass. They kicked our ass. It was me and Andrew Digby. They kind of kicked our ass when it came to questions and pointed out a lot of different things. And we thought we were pretty buttoned up, but we weren't ready for the level of sophistication that we needed. So that really stuck with me, and having that feeling of disappointment after presentations, because up until then they were all school presentations, everything's great, whatever, you get a grade, you move on. But that was like, these guys are kind of who I look up to, they're idols, and they kind of tore you apart. And so that's what I needed at that point. And from there, I've been really trying to harness that feeling as it drives me as we go into any other presentation. So that was a good one that I remember. It sticks with me.
Yeah, the getting your stomach kicked in a presentation is something that you get used to when you get into partnerships and marketing. All right, I want to transition a little bit to your professional careers and give you an opportunity to kind of talk through something that you're proud of that you've put on. I think whether it's in the pandemic or just in the first 5 years of your career, I think I know everyone has something that they hang their hat on, something that's like the lead bullet on your resume, a project that you've worked on, a deal that you've closed, something unique and different. Brett, we'll start with you. Do you have what is the deal that you fall back on, one that you say, man, this was a career maker, this was like the coolest, most unique thing that turned some heads, or something that you're proud of?
This question wasn't in the prepared question list.
Nope.
You're going off script. It's a good question. So there's one deal I remember when I was back at the Pens that was pretty cool, and it was unique, tying in a youth hockey program with a company that was very non-traditional and unique. So to give you kind of the short story, it was a water technology company, in Pittsburgh, like $1 billion company. And they were doing some local team deals, and we had a small deal with them. But their new VP came in and said, I don't know why we're doing this. The current stuff we're doing doesn't make sense to us, but our CEO wants to continue to support the teams, but I'm against this. Come back with a presentation or a partnership that connects us to water. Their water technology and had a natural connection to water. It's like, okay, we go back and we think and did some research, and we borrowed, some ideas, as this entire industry typically is. But what we created was a platform for youth hockey players at the start of the season to collect their own ice shavings in little tubes that we distributed throughout Western PA. We collected those ice shavings, had a free game for kids in the preseason. They brought them down. They dumped their ice shavings as symbolically a way to infuse the energy into the Penguins. We had their water filtration system filter it, and then we laid it on our ice in PPG. So it's called like a great day for our ice. And so symbolically, we told the story of how this transfer from ice shavings to the youth kids at youth hockey level is helping fuel and tell this powerful story of helping the players on the ice, and they're one in the same, right? We wanted to make that connection along with connecting it to water and connecting it to those ice shavings. And then later in the season, we took ice shavings from the Penguins and sent them back to each of the rinks that they can then symbolically dump on their own ice rinks, and fusing energy back into them. So we sat down with them, with this new VP. And the first thing she says, and we were on the title slide, I think this is just a really interesting story. The title slide, we get ready to go. Right before this, the Steelers walked out. So the Steelers are pitching him, and then she purposely made us come in right after and made sure that we passed each other and we knew each other. So we're like, okay, we're all competing for the same business. And we sit down, we chit chat, whatever, we get going, we put the presentation up. And I'm about to go, and she goes, you spelled our name wrong. And so my heart sinks. I'm like, there's no way we spelled their company name wrong. And we look, and it wasn't, but it completely threw me off in the game. And we had a good laugh about it, and I still tease her to this day. But holy cow, talk about for something you weren't ready for. And we ended up presenting it, we pitching it, and she was impressed at the end and thought it was a really good opportunity. And we ended up getting the deal done, and a significant increase, $250,000 increase. So that was pretty powerful. And I'm a youth hockey player. I played youth hockey growing up, so the connection to the youth hockey thing was really cool for me.
Yeah, when you get thrown a curveball like that, it's like you're like a frog on a lily pad, just kind of standing out on your own, and you don't really know where to go from there. So that's interesting. Kareem, I'll ask you I know I've seen some of the stuff that you guys have been doing internationally with some of the teams. I'm curious, what's kind of your 1A project that you've worked on that you're proud of?
I think since we work in content, so there's a lot of things that happen on a daily basis. But over the past year or two that stood out for the same client that we're working for, Borussia Dortmund, that are kind of memorable. The first one, two actually revolved around transfer announcements. So they signed players, and we worked kind of around announcing that transfer on social across all their platforms. The first one was they were signing an English international player. His name was Jude Bellingham. So we obviously knew about the transfer a couple of days before it was going to happen. And his original team, where he used to play, Birmingham in the UK, the fans over there link him to the Beatles, Hey Jude, the song. So we wanted to think about an innovative way to announce that transfer and at the same time tease fans about it. So about 3 or 4 days before the actual announcement is going to happen, and people didn't know whether the deal is going to go through or not, from a fan perspective, obviously we were given a heads up prior. We started posting teasers using Beatles songs. So we posted on, for example, the announcement was on a Monday. So on the Wednesday before, we posted a picture from the team's training, and there was a sun in the background, and the caption was, "Here comes the sun." And then the next day it was a player who was raising his hand. It was day in the life, and so on. So we did that 4 days in a row up until leading to the actual announcement. And not a single person from the fans realized it. Up until the day the announcement was announced, it was a Monday, as I said. We went with Hey Jude, which is obviously the Beatles' #1 song. And then we never mentioned anything about it, and fans started picking up the crumbs and connecting the dots. And then everyone was like blown away, like, oh my God, they've been teasing us for the past 4 or 5 days and we had no idea. So this one was kind of interesting to work on. The other one that was also interesting, another transfer announcement that actually led to potential commercial opportunities, was we did a signing. The team did a signing for a player who is famous for doing like a yoga celebration after every time he scores a goal. So we took that insight and we created a piece of content. It was like a 15-20 second video where we took audio from Headspace, where like close your eyes, meditate, and then open your eyes again. And then we did a transition from his old team jersey to the new one, which was well received again from the fans, from the player, from the overall media. But what was interesting is that Headspace actually reached out after that piece of content went viral, reached out to the team to discuss potential commercial opportunities. And okay, actually worked out. It seems that your fan base is completely hooked about us and their brand. And it led to a deal between the two, which was obviously awesome and best case scenario that can happen in something like that, in terms of us like going just from beyond fan engagement to actually generating revenue. And I remember like texting AB Andrew Bauschel about it, and he also enjoyed it as well.
I'm glad. Yeah, that's a really cool. If you can ever could get it to revenue generation, I mean, especially from your side being in content, if you can directly tie that back, I think it makes it that much more valuable, and honestly makes Sport5 that pitch that much stronger every time out. Todd, we'll wrap with you. I think this is kind of your the last part of this portion, but I'm curious, something that you hang your hat on for in your career, project or something of that sort.
You know, I don't know if I have something as good as both of those two to hang my hat on personally. I will say, I think the crux of this question originally was like something interesting from the pandemic. So I will more so just to sing the praises of my agency team. But something that hopefully everyone remembers was the Last Dance last spring in the real doldrums of pandemic time. And that obviously had a big impact on Jordan Brand. Wasn't anything that was produced in-house, and not to shine a light on the wrong thing here, but like internally, Jordan was not prepared for it to happen on that schedule. It was moved up. If everyone was aware of that, it was moved up a couple months, and they did not have a brand plan for it. But the thing that I was proud of my team for, the hustle outcome to like produce things around it. The social agencies got to do really fun stuff. They got to produce like an after show and do all these things that could kind of fly through. And we had to come up with proposals of like, how do we connect this to commerce? Because that's where we partner with Jordan, is we connect with them on Jordan.com and Nike app. And like, what are we doing that's going to like turn this into sales in a way that feels connected for consumers? And we helped them with this huge lift of using user-generated content, centered around a hashtag or campaign of In My J's, and helped them get an expedited, like legally approval system so that they could actually post it on their commerce website. We worked with their merchandising partners to make sure that we had like relevant product walls connected to the product that was showing up in the in each episode. So that, if we were talking about an iconic like black-red silhouette, we had something showing up on the website that was like a black-red retro. And then we probably didn't have that for sale on Jordan.com, but we're giving you like some black-red Jordan so that it felt like a connected journey. And frankly, I didn't really enjoy the documentary all that much because it was some of the longest working weeks of my life. And I didn't really have any interest in watching it by the time we were done talking about it at the end of the week. But we're a fairly small functional team. And, as an outside partner to a brand that size, when you're trying to propose fast acting solutions to something like a documentary that you're not in control of, there's really a lot more question marks than there are answers. And so, going through that process of taking ultimately like tried and true ideas that aren't going to, blow anyone's mind, like using user generated content on your website, but helping that team come through, like, what's the strategy of how it's going to drive a connected consumer journey. And then like internally, how are you going to get this approved by all the like numerous people at Nike and Jordan that need to approve something before it's being published on the website, when like you're seeing the episodes and then you're making these decisions in real time. And you know, I am by no way saying I'm the person that did all those things, but it really was a moment where I came to really appreciate the team that I work on and the people that I work with. And just like, you know, sometimes you're going to be put in a spot where you have no choice but to come up with the best possible version of a solution. And maybe it's not the ideal of what you maybe would have done if you would have had the time to sketch it out. But sometimes a documentary about Michael Jordan happens 2 months sooner than you expected. And that's just, you make the best of it. And so it was cool. Those user generated content modules were some of the most clicked on things on Nike.com's ecosystem for that month. That's again, not because of us, that's because the documentary was sick, but it was cool to see that we were at least able to create a connected enough journey to that it wasn't just like a moment in time where people were thinking about Jordan. But we were able to convert that into real positive outcomes for the brand. And, you know, that's something that I hope everyone on my team is proud of from that last spring. And it was unique, and we probably wouldn't happen any other year but 2020. So that'll be something that I'm proud of that team of for a long time.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been great. I mean, I could sit at a bar with the three of you and do this for hours, but unfortunately our time constraints for this portion have hit us. So I look forward to catching up on this whenever I see you all again, hopefully sometime soon. But with that, I guess we will transition kind of to our college athletics side of this panel. So thank you guys. So I'll introduce the three panelists for our college athletics panel, and then I'll let them kind of dive into their background a little bit better. But first we have Kaylee Krisick, who is the Director of Partnership Activation for Notre Dame Global Partnerships. We also have Becky Panny, Senior Associate Athletic Director for Sport Administration at Indiana, IU. And then Ryan White, who's the Senior Associate Athletic Director of Development at University of Kansas, and probably the person who spent the most time in Athens out of everybody on this call. So with that, welcome everybody. I appreciate you guys taking the time. Kaylee, do you want to start first, introduce yourself a little bit, talk about kind of what got you to your role currently?
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here, and great first half of the panel. But my name is Kaylee Krisick, and I work as the Director of Partnership Activation for Notre Dame Global Partnerships. So I essentially run our activation team, and I'm focusing on overall strategy and execution of Notre Dame Athletics corporate partners. Currently, specifically working on brands like Guinness. I imagine some of you have seen that, as well as Nissan with the Heisman House and a few others that can't be named yet, but that'll be launching in the upcoming months. So in my role, essentially collaborating across different departments, whether that's the Alumni Association, licensing, sustainability, procurement, student athlete welfare and development. You know, sometimes I work with James Biddick, who's on this call, about, student athlete career opportunities, as well as Fighting Irish Media, which is our digital team. So working some with Pat Durant who's should be on this call. I hope he is. But on hockey and football content that's going out. So that's from like a content perspective, heavily focused on our digital strategy and on-site activations, and then working with our business development team that's out pitching brands, essentially ensuring that what they're pitching is feasible. So greatly, as an activation person, I greatly appreciate business development, but people like Brett and Travis, sometimes you get a little wild and pitch things that might not be feasible to execute. So trying to keep you guys in line. But without you, I wouldn't have a salary. So thanks. So my role essentially just trying to make a lot of different people and companies happy, whether that's internally at NDGP or internally at within Notre Dame Athletics, or externally with partners.
Awesome. Becky, we'll throw it to you.
Sure. Good evening, guys. I'm really excited to be here. So I am the Senior Associate Athletic Director overseeing sport administration at Indiana, and started this role in July of this year. So, right in the middle of the pandemic, which has been great. We had an athletic director transition at that time as well. So I stayed on staff with him. Previously, we were in a few different positions throughout IU. I started in compliance, loved that a lot, was in there for about 10 months. Started then working with our senior woman administrator, who's the AD at Ohio University now, Julie Cromer. Worked with her until she left for Arkansas with our sports programs, and basically served as her administrative assistant. And then moved into a director of operations role for the department, and focused on our branding and our strategic facilities. So at that point, we started about $250 million worth of facility renovation. So spent a lot of my time in strategic facilities, and then the other half of my time really helping our athletic director with strategic initiatives, administration stuff, presentations, things like this, and then started my new role in July. Really excited about that. I oversee the common things that you see through all of our sports. So game contracts, coach contracts, exit interviews, student surveys. Right now, COVID. I feel like half of my job is COVID right now, fortunately or unfortunately. We're doing this really cool thing called championship plans, which is basically our strategic planning for each of our sports. So we're sitting down with coaches and really starting those valuation tools right now. And like Kaylee, I'm really excited to be here and look forward to chatting with you for the rest of the evening.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll round it out with Ryan down in Kansas.
Sounds good. Thanks, Travis. Appreciate you guys having me. Good to see a lot of familiar faces on the call tonight. I've been at KU since February of 2019. I am the Senior Associate Athletics Director for Development. Basically, that means I oversee the development operation, which is the fundraising arm of Kansas Athletics. Needless to say, we've had quite an interesting time in 2 years here, not only in the news, but some staff transition, AD transition, football coach. And so it's been a wild ride, but I can't think of a better place to be. Prior to KU, I was at Ohio University, and I was also the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Development there. I also did some adjunct teaching in the sports administration program. So again, I see a lot of familiar faces, which was actually one of the highlights of my time in Athens. I spent 5 years in Athens. Prior to that, I was 11 years at the University of Virginia, where I was a fundraiser for their athletics department. And then prior to that, I got my start at NC State, my alma mater, working in development for the Wolfpack Club. So that's kind of my journey here.
Awesome. And Ryan, we'll keep it with you for the first question. I know that when you were in Athens, and I'm sure at Virginia, NC State, I know that you've managed a lot of entry-level people, especially in your time in Athens with the Bobcat Club and the GAs that transitioned every year. I think as we look at students who are entering the workforce soon, if they haven't already, what is something that you would suggest focusing on in your first year, 6 to 12 months, that could maximize the impact in that time that you as a leader are looking for those first year out, whether it's grad school, undergrad, kind of entry-ish level employees? What is something that you look for, you would suggest focusing on to maximize their impact?
You bet. I actually had a guy start with us about 3 months ago, and kind of fits this profile. Some of this stuff sounds really cliche. Do the job that you were hired to do. Don't worry about your next move. That'll eventually come. I think we're always kind of focused on, okay, I got this job. How do I get to that next opportunity? Be really, really good. You hear this all the time. Be really, really good. People will notice. People will see that you're doing a good job. Don't be afraid to speak up, and really offer to help. In times like COVID, we have a lot on our plates. We're short-staffed. People that are coming by and saying, "Hey, Ryan, I know you're slammed. How can I help you?" Be willing to learn other things beyond what you were hired to do. Those are attributes and qualities that I look for. Accountability, people that follow up. Again, very, very basic things that I think makes a good entry-level employee and kind of takes them to that next level. So I just kind of start with that.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and just hitting the ground running and hitting expectations is a big way to help start making that impact slowly, because it does take a long time to do that. Becky, I'm curious from your perspective, in the first 6 to 10 to 12 months, someone entering the workforce, what you would suggest focusing on to maximize impact?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same things Ryan said. I think one interesting tidbit, and I've kind of taken it with me as I transitioned roles at IU as well, is especially in the first 6 months, I think making sure that you're not being over aggressive in things and you're really taking a step back and you're evaluating things, but you're being quiet about where you see there's weaknesses in the organization. And then you're figuring out a plan to present to your supervisor, your coworkers, of how you fill those gaps. So I think it's really taking that initial time to build relationships with people around you, and then really exerting how you can provide your value in the new role you're taking on, the new position you're taking on. Because even if you're in a new role in the same organization, right, you've got to build some new relationships with people. I think that's really, really important, is getting out of kind of your comfort zone of your unit and going to different people, different units, figuring out who can help you get things done, being strategic about that, but also not going in swinging real hard early on until you get a good feel of where you can provide the most value that you can for the organization.
I think in my opinion, the point that you hit on about kind of building relationships, building internal equity is, no matter where you are. I think I don't work in college athletics. I've worked in athletic departments before, but working at a professional organization, you are siloed a little bit, and you have to get to know those people that you're going to be cross-functioning with, because it's not just going to be served up to you. And I think during the pandemic, it's especially difficult because you can't just pop in someone's office or someone's cube or go to coffee with someone, or at least you haven't been able to in the last year. And I would agree with you on that. I think that, to me, is one of the most important pieces that isn't necessarily something that can be taught in a classroom. It's just how to build relationships with the people that you work with and make them want to work with you. I think, to your point, that's a really strong point.
And we all work in sports, right? Like, that's the best part of the best parts of working with sports is whether you're interacting with fans or the players or the student athletes or your coworkers or your donors and all that stuff. And Bo Bauer's on this call, he's presenting later, and I'm sure he'll say this, but one of our colleagues always says, like, you got to put those deposits in so you can get them out when you need them. And I think that's a really underrated thing, especially when you're starting off.
Internally and externally, absolutely. Kaylee, I'll ask you the same question. I know Becky and Ryan were PMSA, so they were professional while doing their degree. You were on campus with me. I know. So curious as to your perspective now that you are, helping run a department and managing people. What is something that you would suggest in the first year for someone coming out of school to make the highest impact?
Yeah, I would say be curious and ask as many questions as possible. I don't want to say don't ask dumb questions, but I would just remember my first job out of grad school, and I was actually working for an Ohio alum, Paul Woody, and the first partner meeting that I had, I walked out and immediately opened up Google and searched about 10 different acronyms. I had no idea what they meant, and just started asking a lot of questions, whether it was internally, my boss or my other colleagues, as well as people on this call from our class and in different chats, and just trying to learn as much as possible, because in grad school, we learned a lot, but it's so much, the information we learned is much different than boots on the ground, especially from an execution perspective. We're compiling assets, we're dealing with specs, we're dealing with all of these different platforms and video boards and rotating signage, stuff that it wasn't taught in grad school because it essentially just can't be. So I would say that, and then also kind of echoing what Ryan said, looking ahead at a post-COVID world, there's going to be a lot of room for people to step up and take new responsibilities because of the amount of resources that have been lost. And, I think our athletic department lost a third of its staff. And there's no immediate plans and sorry, I say that from a Notre Dame athletics perspective, not NDGP specifically, but someone has to take on those responsibilities that have fallen off. So be willing to do the work, and, you know, very cliche, work hard. What does that even mean? But just be willing to do more than what your job description actually says. And I think if you do that and you have good managers, then they'll recognize that and you'll be rewarded for it ultimately.
So I want to stay on that topic with COVID. I think that that's something everybody top of mind. It's impacted every sport, level of sports, college, pro, amateur, all the above. Becky, we'll start with you. Like, how has COVID impacted your job, and how has your team stayed agile through all of this and had to pivot on some things to survive? How has this impacted your day-to-day life?
So since about April of last year, I guess probably March, but we started really, everyone kind of went home right in March, and no one did anything for a little bit until we figured out what was going on. I've been working on a team with 3 other people, 2 of our deputy ADs, Maddie White and Stephen Harper, and then our chief medical officer, Andy Hipskin. And we've kind of been overseeing all of the COVID operations for the whole department. So when you ask, like, how has it personally affected me? I feel like half my life right now is COVID, and I'm very excited for it to be over, as I think everyone is, and kind of getting on right now, our big push on campus is getting, our players vaccinated and our students vaccinated, and making sure that they have all the information that they need to make an educated decision for themselves. If they want to get vaccinated, we're obviously very highly encouraging them to get vaccinated, but we're letting them work through that right now and working through all of that stuff. I think the biggest thing for us that we learned is that really our student athletes, like, they kind of just went with it. Like, yes, a lot of people struggled and they talked through it and they worked through it, but they wanted to play and they put in what they needed to do to play. Our women's basketball team somehow from I think their last positive was a manager in September. So from let's just say October 1st, all the way through the NCAA tournament for them, they had 0 cases within the program. Like, they locked it in. They wanted to do that. And they did a really, really good job with it. On the flip side of that, we obviously had a lot of coaches who were they just needed some guidance on it, and we had to work through that. And I think that the challenge was, and everyone wanted the same goal at the end. And I think the biggest challenge was making sure that everyone was on the same page and everyone knew we were really, really working hard to get all of our teams back. I think the Big Ten was a little tricky, right? Because we canceled everything. Then we brought football back. Then we started releasing schedules for teams who were starting in 2 weeks after January 1. So it was really tricky. It was tricky to watch other conferences start playing when we weren't. It was navigating that whole situation. And I think, I don't know how some of the athletic directors across the country did it, and everyone's really done a fantastic job, I think, of doing their best in what was a really tough situation. But I think that what we got out of it is that everyone's a lot closer than they were before. I think everyone now understands how hard people on the coaching side and people on the administration side are working together to really get what we need to get done. And I think that was one of the hidden benefits of COVID that we'll reap for a long time. And I don't think that trust would have been built if we didn't have a massive, really worldwide crisis and worldwide pandemic. So I think that that's one positive we got out of it. And then really, I think that, our student athletes are just resilient, and everyone says that, and it's cliche, but truly, we can throw a lot at them and they can really manage it better than the adult supervision.
Ryan, I'm curious from your perspective. Becky has a great perspective, kind of internal and student athletes and coaches. From your side, obviously you're mostly external facing. How has this impacted your operation, and how have you stayed agile in making things work for the interim?
Travis, it's impacted everybody on this call in one way or another, whether we're students or we're, in our own jobs. From an external standpoint, we didn't have all the answers, and we made the best choices at the time. We think back to a lot of the decisions that were made. As a fundraising organization, we still had goals to hit. We had to change our messaging. And we had to do it on the fly and do it really quickly. And we all are doing this in our own businesses and our own work. And, I was thinking about this question, and, there were some things that we did that were really good. And then there were some things that, in hindsight, we tried and it weren't so great. So we were far from perfect, but what we did, one thing Becky talked a little bit about the people and how, you're closer together. And I look at our colleagues in the Big 12 early on in the pandemic. We got together and did Zoom calls with development colleagues. And this is something that we'd never done before. And we were literally collaborating every single week with one another, trying to say, okay, Baylor, what are you doing? Oklahoma State, what are you doing? And that was a really good resource for us and a good benchmark to say, okay, this is what this school's doing. And obviously we're competing on the field and the court and other competition, but we're really not competing for fundraising dollars. So we were able to kind of share those best practices. There's no manual. I'm obviously speaking, this is pretty obvious. There's no manual you can pull off the shelf that says in a pandemic, this is how you go about fundraising. We didn't know. We were literally taking it an hour at a time, a day at a time. And what I think that's done for us as professionals, again, anybody who's working right now, probably dealing with that adversity made you a better professional. No doubt about it. It was hard. I've been doing development for 21 years now, and every year was pretty similar. Yeah, the wins and losses changed a little bit, or the schools might have changed a little bit, but we never had anything like we did last year. And I look back and I turn the adversity into more of a positive and say, you know what, we challenged that. The pandemic challenged myself. It challenged our staff. It challenged our department, our student athletes, our university, our community, all those people, and we're better for it. And we will be better for it coming out of this.
It causes you to think differently about things for better or for worse, to your point. And I think to Becky's point, I think there is some silver linings that come out of this different way of thinking. And hopefully there's things that can be taken away and that can benefit down the road. And Ryan, that's a great point. It's so hard and no one knows what they're doing. Everybody's kind of figuring out as we go. And I don't think that's specific to college athletics or pro or anywhere. I think it's in everything. So I think that's a really great point. Kaylee, I understand how it's worked with partnerships in the professional world, but for you, how have you stayed nimble and how have you managed your team to kind of get through all of this, knowing all the make good value you have to deliver on and all the renegotiations and all the other things that go into it? How has your team stayed the course during all of this?
Yeah, so similar to what they already said, I mean, we pretty early on accepted that we knew nothing and we were getting information at the same time that everyone else was. I remember being in multiple meetings and someone would unmute themselves and say, hey, did you see the press release? We just joined the ACC, surprise. Or did you see the tweet? This game was canceled. So we learned how to, I think we're in execution and we have to get things done. That's our job. And when there's not an event to execute those assets for, we had to adapt. I would say overall, we shifted a lot to digital. And I think a lot of people on this call can say, who work in sponsorship can say that. It allowed us to kind of ideate across different departments that we might not have had a strong relationship with prior. Our athletic director at the beginning of the pandemic, Jack Swarbrick, he decided to create different committees and subcommittees across the athletic department. And so there was anything from fan engagement to safety and protocols and short-term revenue generation, long-term revenue generation, events, et cetera. And so, I was on a couple of those committees and it really helped us to kind of work together across different departments that we might not in a normal year. And also being Notre Dame, like we're innovative in a lot of ways, but we're also extremely traditional and have a lot of regulations that other schools don't have. Like we don't have traditional signage in venue. We have zero signage. So we're we're having to think outside of the box and think of these larger platforms or ways to activate. So it allowed us to ideate more. And then from a make good perspective, I mentioned digital, but I think a lot of our partners, we have great partnerships and people working on those partnerships, and just everyone gave each other grace this year for the most part. And we're all in this together. It'll eventually, I don't want to say get back to normal, but just understanding that this was just a weird time and everyone is handling it in very different ways.
Yeah, it's been a transition for everybody, but the nice thing is I'm hoping we're closer to the end than the beginning. It seems like we are. So we have time for one more question. And as I know, all of you are just chomping at the bit to talk about name, image, likeness. I'm gonna focus this more on career growth and progress, and focus more on students who are finishing now. This is a question that I wish I would have asked when I was in school, because I personally kind of wrestled with this quite a bit. But when all of you, I think it's clear your passion lies in college athletics. And I think this ties nicely back with the celebration of Doc Higgins in his last year. And I know the one thing I took from his class was really finding what your passion is and building on it. Ryan, I want to start with you, because I know that 20 years in college athletics, that's a long time in different schools, different regions. How did you know that college athletics was your passion, and what advice would you give to someone who's trying to figure out, is it pro, is it agency, is it college, and trying to navigate that path?
So my path was pretty clear. My dad was in college athletics, more on the marketing and public relations side. I, like a lot of people on this call, did not know what I wanted to do, but I said, I think I want to do corporate sponsorships. There was no internships available. They said, hey, why don't you go down and talk to the Wolfpack Club, the development office. So I went through that process and kind of landed in the job. But I was introduced to college athletics through my father. So that was kind of a natural tie. And then I immediately loved the experience that I got at NC State, worked there, and then kind of moved on. I would say the second part to your question, I get a lot of people, and the most enjoyable thing about the Ohio program or being in the position that I'm in today is that we can all give back. Each person on this call can give back to somebody that needs our help. And I enjoy the mentorship aspect. And I will get people that say, I want to work in college athletics. And I'm like, that's great, but there's 18 different units in college athletics. There's internal, external, and I go through the whole spiel. And I'm like, you've got to be able to narrow that focus when you're talking to somebody. Well, then they say, well, how do I understand what one of those things do I want to do? And I say, find somebody, find a mentor. Maybe it's me, but let me kind of talk to you about these different areas, and let's figure out if your skill set matches what this job responsibility is. And so that would be, find a mentor, find somebody that's going to help you out, determine your focus, and then how do you get in the business? We all know, whether it's college athletics or something else, it's a hard industry to get your foot in the door. I just talked to somebody on this call tonight that shared some great news that he got a job recently. And I'm like, man, it is the hardest thing ever to get your first opportunity. And he did it. And so it's awesome news, but some people don't have that ability. Most people do have to do internships. You do an internship, you do it for a year. People are like, well, what if I don't like it after a year? Well, the solution is go volunteer. My department, I guarantee you, Becky's department, I'm sure Kaylee's department, they're always looking for volunteers, paid or unpaid. Go and volunteer, find out what you like, what you don't like. And then, the last piece of advice I would give you, once you kind of narrow in on all that, is get involved with a professional organization. And in college athletics, there's none better than NACTA. And I definitely have been a part of the organization for a long time, and I believe in it. And it's created opportunities for me through networking and other things. So those are just some things that I think about when I talk to people about, getting into the business and how to get into the business, and advice on how to move, how to progress.
Yeah, Becky, did you have any other advice that you would give to students coming out of school that want to figure out what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you'll quickly know if you like something or you don't like something. And I don't think, I was just talking to one of my friends in the business last night, and she was like, I don't know if people are going to judge me if I leave this job after a year, but I don't like it. I was like, I mean, we just lived through a worldwide pandemic. So if you don't like something, like, why the hell would you stay in it? Like, but just like you can, like, it's you're not a tree. You can move if you want to move. If you really like something too, you don't have to move. Ryan and I were just talking about this with one of our colleagues, and I think that I think that getting in is the hardest part, right? But I think moving around and finding what you like and talking to people, and if you're in a job that maybe you don't see yourself doing long term, compliance was it for me, right? There's a lot of people who I love who have made lifelong careers in compliance. I knew I didn't want to do that, but I made the best of it and still got myself another job from that. So it's building those relationships with people, just like Ryan said. It's reaching out to anyone. The Ohio network is the best because everyone's willing to talk and everyone will do everything they can to help you. So I think keeping that in mind, but don't be scared to go with your gut, and don't be scared to just really take whatever the next step in your career looks like. Just go ahead and go with your gut, get in. You guys will be able to get jobs. I promise. It's going to be tough for the next little bit, but there will be jobs opening up. College athletics isn't going away. I mean, I think if anything, the NIL stuff and what these players are going to be able to make off of their name, image, and likeness just shows how much college athletics isn't going away. It's going to change a lot, and there's going to be a lot of differences than what we're seeing right now, but it's not going away. So I think that's my best advice to everyone.
And Kaylee, you want to round us out?
Would love to. Yeah, I would just say that just know that your path will most likely drastically change throughout after you graduate and throughout your career. I didn't mention this earlier because I'm the worst and forgot to say where I came from, but I was a student athlete at Notre Dame, and I just, my whole life, it was, you're going to play tennis, you're going to go be an athlete, a student athlete at Notre Dame, you're then going to get a job and you're going to get married, you're going to have kids and all of these things. And yes, I got a job, but I just expected my path. I had this plan and I expected it to be a certain way, and it's completely different than what has actually happened. And kind of going off of Rebecca's point, like, do what feels right at the time. The pandemic, I think, has put a lot of things into perspective for a lot of people. Some of the people in my class know right now, like, I just got a puppy, and that is something that I've wanted for a really long time. And I finally was like, you know what, this is what I need to do. And if I need to make sacrifices in other aspects of my life, whether that's my career, personal, etc., like, that is what I want to do. And again, that's kind of an aside, but just understand that it's going to change. Like, if you ask my old colleagues at Air Force, so post grad school, I worked at the Air Force Academy, and I specifically remember my colleagues asking, do you see yourself in a similar role at Notre Dame, considering you were an alum and a student athlete there, you love it so much? And I just remember saying, absolutely not. I will never go back and work there. And here I am, years later in that role, or in the role that I'm in, working for my alma mater, and I love it. But I think in some weird way, it all worked out. So just know it's not what you think it's going to be, and that's okay. Just be comfortable with that.
Not everybody's path is linear. I couldn't agree with that more. Thank you guys so much, Ryan, Becky, Kaylee. This is great to hear. I think you guys, your perspective is so valued, and all the years on this call, and I know everybody here appreciates your perspective. So personally, thank you. From our class, thank you, and I think everybody on this call also. We appreciate you all taking the time. So I know we've eaten up a couple minutes of the next group. So Colby, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Travis. My name is Colby Pepper. I'm a current MBA student here at Ohio. And thank you so much for Travis for running that first panel. And then as well, all of our all-star panelists from class of 2016 and all their friends who were able to hop on, and classmates as well. It's awesome to see a bunch of familiar faces from that class as well. So at this point, we're going to transition to the 10-year panel. We got some more all-star panelists that are going to kick it off from the class of 2011. At this point, I'm going to introduce our next moderator, Matt DeLauder. After his time in Athens, he moved out to California, spent some time working for a boutique agency, and now is currently the membership director at the Bay Club Company. So Matt, I'll let you take it away and introduce your class. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Colby. As soon as the slide popped up, I was like, who is that goofball over there? That's me, Matt. Tough act to follow. Travis, very well done. I made a note here that I feel like you could double in your second life as a talk show host. Very well done.
I appreciate that.
So little bit of background. So again, as Colby mentioned, I work for a company called the Bay Club. I manage the membership team, sales department for our San Diego campus. So a country club, the one behind me, as well as like a sports resort. So I've been there almost 2 years now, and having a lot of fun, a little bit outside of the traditional sports marketing agency realm, but really, really enjoy it. And I get to play a little bit of golf in my off time. So as we move forward, I guess let's start by introducing the panel. We've got Bo Bauer, Director of Development and Major Gifts, affectionately referred to as El Prez. He was our class president for our 2011 class, and doubles as a doctor on the side, I think. Claire Surratt Francis, Senior Director, Marketing for the Bridgestone Arena. Claire was a MBA MSA student, and she and I got along very well in the first year trying to fight through that MBA, to say the least. So as I'm moving along, Tara Jackson, Director, Partnerships for Body Armor. I'm sure that a lot of you have seen a lot of her work over the past few months or a year or two. So she will go into a little bit more about that. And then Rishi Lau, the handsome one, the Canadian Director of Corporate Partnerships for the CHL. Brooks Neal, Director of Corporate Development. Did we get that right, Brooks?
Corporate sales. I'm glad it got changed. It was activation.
I know, and it's cut off on the bottom of my screen. So Brooks Neal, and then lastly we've got Benny Wang. Ben's the executive director of, I think, and again, it's cut off on my screen, but is it director of analytics, executive director of analytics?
Yeah, analytics, business intelligence, same thing.
The smartest man in the room. So I guess with that being said, we're going to start with the first group, which is more on the development and partnership side. And for the first three folks that will be involved in this session, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of opportunity to do a much better job at introducing yourselves than I did. So with that being said, we've got Bo, Rishi, and Brooks who are going to head up this panel. And I guess let's start with Bo. Bring us up to speed. Give us a little bit of your background. We don't need to know what, the 3 interesting traits or 3 truths and a lie or whatever, but just give us some background so that everyone knows your path and where you're at right now.
Thanks, Matt. And good evening, everyone. I have no idea what Matt's talking about when it comes to being a doctor, so we'll just let that one go along. But no, it's good to be here, and I'm just bummed that we all couldn't be in Athens for a second year straight. As Matt said, Director of Development for Major Gifts here at IU, the Varsity Club and Fundraising. I've been here almost 8 years now, which is kind of wild to think about. I came down actually from Notre Dame Sports Properties. So Kaylee probably works alongside Greg Hughes, who I worked for a couple of years, 2.5 years, another fellow Bobcat, before, it transitioned over to their current operation. Here, as Becky said, we've had a, leadership change last July. And then since then, been overseeing our major gifts side of things here for the Varsity Club on the fundraising side. So just happy to be here and looking forward to chatting.
Thanks, Bo. And Rishi, a little background?
I got to say, first off, to get Matt DeLauder out of bed, this must be a big night to have and to have him as a moderator. Very, very honored to have him as a moderator. But I think a few people said it really is an honor to speak to this group, just thinking of the talent that this program has turned out over the years. And the talent on this call is really something special. So happy to be a part of the call. I work for the Canadian Hockey League. We're the largest developmental league in the world from hockey perspective. So we're really the last stop before these kids get drafted into the NHL. So there's 60 teams. We've got, I think close to 9 million fans that attend our games. And I'm a director of corporate partnerships, and I'm in charge of generating revenue for our league.
Thanks, Rishi. And last but certainly not least, Brooks.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. So I'm the director of corporate sales for the New York Jets. Focus predominantly on new business, not activation. So we generate revenue for the New York Jets, MetLife Stadium, which we share with the New York Giants, and which is cool. We get the opportunity to actually sell New York Giants assets. So a pretty unique situation. Obviously the same as in LA with the Rams and the Chargers. This is my 4th season. Before this, I was with the Cleveland Cavaliers for 5 seasons, same role, partnership development. And before that, I was with Speedway Motorsports and some NASCAR tracks for about 2 seasons.
Excellent. All right, guys. So I guess to start off, we've got some questions that are lined up, and I guess just before I get into that, just again wanted to say thank you for everybody's time. And I know on the East Coast it's getting towards the later part of the evening, so thank you for everyone sticking with it, and hopefully there's some value that everyone gets out of it. So I guess with the first question, and we'll let everyone, we'll let Rishi, Bo, and Brooks all kind of speak to these pieces, and feel free to jump in if there's anything that I missed. But I guess let's start with Bo. So we've got this question, which is just looking for final advice, right? And we were always looking for that advice from the graduates from before us, and doing the informational interviews, and just trying to gain as much information as we possibly could. But with that being said, what final advice would you give to, say, someone that's in the program going into their 2nd year, or someone who's just about to graduate out of the program?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you think about the last year, and it's been touched on a lot tonight, but this has been one of the most unique and challenging years probably for college students that you can think of, with the seclusion and everything else they've had to go through. So for all of you that have been there on campus, I feel for you, because you really probably didn't get to experience Athens as in all its glory. But to that end, if you're graduating, congratulations, and best of luck on finding a job. I think the best thing you can do is stay patient and don't fret about it. Something will happen. Keep doing the things that have been referenced tonight, whether it's networking, making your connections. To that end, I think, at least for us, I know, there's so many hiring freezes and everything that have been put in place for the last year. So whether that's in the next 2 months when fiscal years start to roll, or the next 4 months, there's going to be a need for people to start hiring again. So I think, you're uniquely situated to take advantage of that. And for those heading into their 2nd year, just enjoy it. Try to soak in as much as you can, and, enjoy the time with your classmates, form those bonds, because the class above you, below you, the professional MSAs, those would be some of the most people, or the people you can call on most, when you need something, when you're looking for an idea, when you're looking for a new opportunity, those 40, 50 people are going to be the most people, the people you're going to be closest to and most helpful along the way.
It's well said. And I think that a lot goes into the fact of, you got to maintain focus, and, focus on the prize, which is graduating and ultimately getting in sports, but to take time and have fun, and to whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's, hanging out with friends, playing intramurals, whatever might be, like, take time to soak it in, because it goes fast, really fast. Let's flip to Rishi. What are your thoughts in terms of
advice,
right?
Yeah, echo Bo's comments. It probably seems like for you guys that, Armageddon is hit. Right before you're ready to hit the big time, the pandemic happens. But to echo his comments again, it's going to change. And in the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to be in a really, really different time. So not to use a cliche, but it's always darkest before dawn. Things are going to improve. just give it a little bit more time. In terms of advice, be intentional and take a long-term outlook about the choices you make coming out of school. Trust me, these two things are going to serve you as well as anything in your career. And I'll give you an example. I mean, after I left Athens, I went to UVA and worked for CBS Collegiate Sports Properties there. And after a year, decided to head home. And I had an opportunity to work for a fairly large pro sports team on the sales side. But I knew I wasn't good enough yet. I knew I needed to really kind of get some strategic backing and really work on my sales chops from a strategy perspective. So I made the choice to work for an agency and really have that strategic backing. I hated every goddamn minute of those 3 years of working for that agency. Hated it. But it's where I turned from an amateur to a pro. I mean, I got to sit in rooms with CEOs, with CMOs, got to see what to do on decks, what not to do on decks, how to speak to certain people in a different way, and really how to be a good teammate. And so I got to negotiate NHL contracts, got to really work on multi-million-dollar pitches, and take the lead on some of those things. And so it really, really turned me into a pro. And after that, those 3 years, and again, I hated it, but I got it out because I knew I needed it. So I took a long-term kind of approach. And working there, I mean, after my 3 years, I mean, I closed the largest deal in 40 years of the CHL league history. And that's a direct result of my time working on the agency side, because I knew how to speak their language. I knew how to sit across from them and negotiate with them. And so, again, it's not always easy to take those macro views of your career, but sometimes you got to take stock and really do what's best long-term and not short-term. And the last thing I'd say is take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. I mean, my wife calls me a curmudgeon every once in a while, and she may be true, but nobody wants to work with a curmudgeon. Nobody wants to walk around with like Pat Neeser moping around after the Browns lose. People just don't want to work around with people like that. They want to work with fun people. They want to work with people who are smiling, who are team players. So those are the two big pieces of advice that I think will serve everybody well. I know they serve me well.
I like that.
An innocent bystander here today.
Yeah, we're hammering you. You close a big deal, the naming rights deal. You're gonna get hammered, Patrick.
What are you on vacation? You're not even willing to come on video? What's up, Pat?
I know.
I'm smoking a cigar and having a drink, so I thought that wouldn't be appropriate to have on screen.
That's fair enough.
Love it. Well, but Rishi, to your point, right, is when the comment that you made about growth and the comment of we all get better when we do hard things, and it couldn't be said better. And those 2 years in Athens, I can relate to that. There were some very hard times, and I didn't really understand the value of maybe a particular class, but looking at a big picture, how it all falls in and how it makes us better and how it prepares us to Rishi's point of kind of preparing us for the big leagues.
Even Matt, to jump in, I mean, I remember for Doc Higgins' class, I mean, when he was there, we took it serious, but I don't know how serious we took it initially, but I will tell you, I have a notebook that I still look back to from some of the things Doc said in that class. And it was, at the time, did you think we were going to look back and look at what Doc was saying? Hell no. But I mean, now you look back, you have a bit of perspective, a bit of kind of grease on the wheels. You kind of appreciate where he was coming from. And so I think it's a pretty apt point.
Brooks?
Yeah, it's a good segue into this. So I think that you just need to continuously learn, like push yourself, be curious. The previous panel was talking a lot about curiosity, but that's so important as you develop in your career. You know, to take on projects, learn something new. Like Neeser obviously learned the crypto game, and I love the ricochet that he took there. But like Neeser took it upon himself to learn the crypto game, get that deal done. Like what's on the horizon a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, where people will be ready to do a deal, right? Learn that industry, be the person within your organization to take that on and be the expert. So when that does become an opportunity that you can take over. Like for me, like when I was with the Cleveland Cavaliers, the international business was huge for us because we got LeBron James. We're global. They need someone to go and approach Chinese companies, other international companies. And I had already done the research beforehand, and they chose me to go and kind of lead that effort, right? So always be curious, be ready to take opportunities, and be willing to take projects and push yourself.
That's well said. And let's stay with you, Brooks, on that. So, this question's hard to pose because we're trying to figure out, aside from COVID, what's been the most challenging aspect over the past 12 months in your job. But with that being said, if you can think of, and I guess COVID is interwoven in our reality right now, but what was it, if you could point to one or many things outside of the obvious that you really struggled with this, over the past 12 months?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I struggle with it.
How do you work past it, right? Like what was the problem and what did we do to kind of figure it out?
Yeah, and I would say it started in the beginning of COVID and it's still going. I'm in New York. New York is a more transactional market. Like how you sell in Cleveland or Cincinnati or Toronto is different than how you would sell to people in New York. We're in the people business and sales, right? So how we communicate to people in New York is different than how we communicate to some of those other people. So in New York, instead of just saying here's what we offer, here's who I am, like here's why we're different, we're really leading with empathy, like making sure they're okay physically, making sure they're okay mentally, making sure their business is fine, making sure that they're going to be employed in 6 months. Are things not going well for them? So it's really a flip side to where we're leading with empathy rather than just saying, hey, we're the New York Jets. We're the data team in the NFL and we do all these things, X, Y, Z. We're the biggest and best in New York and MetLife Stadium. It's not that at all. It's really leading with empathy and understanding someone's situation. And I think a lot of that's going to carry over, at least for me personally, going forward in the COVID times.
You said it and hit the nail on the head. That was something that I experienced moving from coast to coast and trying to understand how people operate in a different demographic. And I love that you lead less with, here's what the proposal is. Are you willing to commit? And more of a looking at them from a personal side. So I like that. And I can relate to that as well. Rishi?
I mean, it's similar to probably 95% of the people on this call. It's kind of figuring out this whole work from home thing. I mean, when you add in 2 kids, there are probably, if I could show you this room, there's probably 10 holes in the wall for me banging my head against the wall, trying to work and trying to manage the kids. My wife's at home as well. She's working full time as well. And with the pandemic here in Toronto, the kids have been at school probably for a month out of the school year. And so trying to make sure they're online. If I hear, Daddy, can you wipe my bum one more time? I'm in the middle of a meeting. Not ideal to hear, but it's trying to manage that and trying to manage being creative and trying to manage I focus best when the door's closed and I have 2-hour chunks. That's when I can be my most creative and that's when I'm at my best. I know a lot of people can do it in smaller increments, but that's what I need. So it's been a challenge. And so it's been a lot of working late at night and working with partners kind of on a different schedule. And so that's kind of been a challenge. And I don't know how you get past that. I mean, and it's different, as Brooks mentioned, we're in the people business and shaking people's hands and going out for drinks, going out for dinner with those guys, looking at the whites of their eyes and after a drink or two, kind of really, really getting to know them. And now it's just transactional kind of, it's more buttoned up. And I think that's good for some roles, but in the sales role, that's the challenge, trying to have those personal connections. And that's why I think previous relationships are so important right now. Someone mentioned when this thing happened and when COVID hit, everyone was scrambling, looking in their contracts for force majeure clauses. And someone said it's going to be a real test of how strong your contracts are. And to me, I flip it. It's complete opposite. To me, it's not how strong your contracts are. It's how strong your relationships are. If those relationships are strong and you have to build those over time, that's how you're going to really overcome a lot of the challenges in a virtual world.
The network, right? Both professionally and personally, you can't say enough about it, and it gets beat into our heads, as Bobcats, but it's true, absolutely true. Bo, what are your thoughts in terms of challenges overcoming outside of the kids being at home, challenging schedules? What pops out for you personally? You're on mute.
The mute monster, you got me. first one of the night probably. But no, for us, it's probably a little more, if you take, like Rishi said, the family stuff out and figuring out the whole different dynamic. And then, you know, with Brooks, right, in fundraising, you're talking about people's personal wealth a lot of times versus a corporate budget. So those relationships become even more important. They're deeper, they're stronger. And if you don't have that usual interaction, how do you create that in a digital world, right? And especially when things become so cluttered as they did and people start to Zoom fatigue and phase out emails and all that stuff. So getting creative there. But for us, it's probably more local or more specific with our AD turnover. You know, Scott Dolson became our AD in July, as Becky said earlier. He's been with IU for, you know, over 30 years. He's been the director of the varsity club for the last 11. And his, you know, move into the current role, you know, then promoted Kevin Van Roy, who's another Ohio Bobcat. He's now the director of varsity club. You know, myself and a colleague then elevated. So for us, it's been figuring out our new way of operations when we've operated very efficiently and effectively for the last, you know, at least 8 years and 11 years and beyond when Scott was leading the charge. But how do you do that when everybody's virtual and not everybody's in the office every day? And you can't have everybody in a room to meet, and Zoom is great, but some people are there and not. So I think for us, it's been just really being efficient with how we operate, and we're getting better at it, but you know, it just takes time and learning, like someone said earlier, you know, how can you take something off of your boss's desk to make it easier? How can you give something to someone to empower them and to help them grow and work through it? So we're getting there. It's getting better, but it's sort of TBD on the second half of, you know, how do we work past it? We're getting there, and we'll continue to do so. But I think just being virtual, trying to learn a new operation, even though there's not a lot fundamentally changing, it's just now, you know, different people styles and interactions and everything else.
Let's stay in that realm. So past two questions, or the last two questions, kind of blend into each other. One is related to maintaining strong relationships, and the other is some best practices that you picked up that you foresee continuing. So to kind of blend those two together, and we'll stay with you both. But what best practices have you found that you will continue to use as it relates to maintaining those relationships, whether it's with donors, whether it's with other stakeholders at the university? What are some things that you foresee maintaining past the pandemic as it relates to maintaining the relationship and some best practices within that?
For sure. I think, you know, I was thinking about this. It's like, I don't think it's anything different than pre-pandemic in a way, but you know, the three things I just try to listen, be present, and be helpful, provide solutions, right? And if you can do those three things, and understanding and empathetic, like Brooks said. I mean, I had a guy today, he wasn't really thrilled with some emails we sent last fall, you know, but I'm not so sure that on my end that I never ever really connected with him personally, whether it was a phone call or, you know, I'm sure there was an email check-in, something like that. But I think maintaining that connection and letting people know that you care. I mean, and letting people know that for us, especially in fundraising, I mean, the same thing in partnership sales too, but we need to think about this for the next 20 years, not the next 2. And so if you start to penalize people or, you know, hammer in that they have to make their gift this year for a particular seat donation or a campaign gift, and trust me, we have our financial challenges at IU, just like everybody else, probably more so given, you know, our budget and such. But trying to really be strategic and thinking about it for the long term, because, you know, if you can let people have a little window now, I think, you know, you can make up for it on the back end. So not always be focused on the here and now, but focused on maybe the next 5 to 10 years. But it's hard when everybody's got goals and metrics and different things to balance that. But I do think that's something that's really important, and people respect that and people trust that, you know, as it builds a sense of trust when you can, you know, have that empathy and have that connection in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's, so Rishi, we'll keep you until the end, but for Brooks, let's twist this a little bit. So instead of relationship, let's focus sales. right? Pure sales from a best practices. I leading with empathy is home run. But from your side, do you have any advice or recommendations from a best practice standpoint as it relates to selling that you think that will stay through after we get back to normal, that we've picked up from this?
One of the best things that's come out of this is people's being amenable to do these kinds of calls, right? Being on a video call, being able to read someone's body language. If I was selling to Rishi and I tell him something he doesn't want to hear, and just being able to read his body language of how he's feeling. Like if I was on the phone, I would never be able to get that information, and I can pivot easily just by reading his body language. So I think that like video conferencing is here to stay, and it has been a total game changer when you're having conversations with people. It's just, you can tell when they're engaged. You can tell when they're not listening. There's so many things that you can get out of a video that you cannot get out of a phone call. And I think that is here to stay, where before I could never get someone on a video call. Heck, I was never willing to be on a video call for the most part. Right. So now it's like, it's fun because you get a window into people's lives, right? Like you can see my background, you can see pictures of my wife and my kid, like, well, maybe because the screen's probably tiny, but you get a window into someone's personal life that you couldn't get before. Right. So it just opens up different levels of conversation and helps you read the situation much better than what you're typically able to.
Brooks, on that note too, I think I'm gonna jump in and add on this, but I do think the video conferencing is clutch, because when you have someone, whether it's a coach, a C-level executive, your president of your team, your GM, you name it, you can get them 10 minutes to jump on a video call with someone rather than taking them across town to a meeting, or a full day of trying to go make a pitch to someone or get close a gift. So I think that's something that that'll really stick around and be effective for us as salespeople and development officers, is being able to utilize the people that our donors, our prospects want to interact with really quickly and efficiently for their time frame.
Rishi, let's finish it here with you, and let's pivot to more relationship driven, right? So that's why I kind of selected Brooks more on sales, and you kind of brought up maintaining those relationships. So finishing out, like, what have you done to maintain relationships no matter how difficult it has been digitally or whatever it might be? What are some things that you can share with the group that people might be able to take away and put in their toolbox?
Yeah, I mean, before I jump in there, I'm respectfully going to have to disagree with my esteemed panelists with Bo and Brooks. I hate video conferencing, especially from a sales perspective. You don't get that emotion when you're pitching someone, when you're sitting with them, that there's something magical happens just between human beings when people are together, especially when you're asking them for money and you're coming up with creative solutions for their business. That I miss that part of it. And I feel like there's a bit of, you get to see their body language more so than a phone call. And to Bo's earlier point, you can probably get them on for smaller time increments. But to me, there's nothing, and I think we're going to eventually, if you're on different coasts, video conferencing is here to stay. But I feel like people still want to have that human connection. At least I hope, and I hope we get back to that stage, and I think we will. From kind of building and maintaining relationships, it's something I think forefront, and I know Gaynor will probably speak to it Friday. Something they always talk about is celebrating other successes, celebrating people's, and LinkedIn's great for that. When you see someone do something great or post something, I mean, all you can do is click a like and then send them a personal message. Or do a bit of research about your clients. What are they doing? What initiatives have they done? It's not too dissimilar from what I think most of us are doing now, but it's even heightened because you don't have that connection. So do a bit of research, celebrate their success. I mean, if you see them, hey, they got promoted, or one of their direct reports got promoted. I mean, reach out, or unfortunately, someone a couple weeks ago, someone in their family passed away. I mean, we didn't say anything. We just sent them some flowers and a nice card, and just wanted to let them know we're thinking of them. I mean, it's just those small types of things go a hell of a long way in building relationships, and especially in times like this, people really remember the small things, and something OU is famous about, and drilled into my brain, and I had no idea about even doing this before I got to OU, was handwritten notes. I mean, how many times do you get to open a handwritten note that someone took the time to actually mail and write? I mean, some people have their secretaries do it, but the thought that counts, right? And it's so impactful to have that handwritten note. And I probably can count on my left hand how many handwritten notes I've got. I've probably sent 500 in the past probably year and a half, 2 years. And so I think those types of things are really impactful. And just to jump back to the previous question, in terms of what are some best practices? I mean, I think someone spoke about it on the last panel. I mean, I think it's digital excellence and creativity. I mean, the CHL works at such a glacial pace in terms of being forward thinking. They've really stepped up their game because they've had to around make goods and around coming up with content and unique value content for partners and just being creative, because I feel like a lot of times you can just R&D in some places just rip off and duplicate, and I feel like a lot of times our team would do that, but not anymore. We can't. We got to be creative, and I feel like those two things and the pivot to digital was already happening fairly quickly. This just accelerated tenfold, and so a lot of digital, a lot of stuff that could have been done on digital is now being done in digital, and I don't think we're going to be able to tilt that pendulum back the other way. Just like the way advertising is going, right? I think traditional TV advertising has been overtaken by digital, and that happened over the last year, and so it's here to stay. So the brands and the teams that don't change with the times are going to miss out on partnerships and miss out on revenue.
It will never go away from brands and people wanting more value out of things, right? And how do you demonstrate that value and do it in a creative way? And digital obviously is here to stay. So, yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys' time. We're going to pivot to more of a marketing and strategy. So we're kind of we ran about 5 minutes over on the last section. So let's get a quick introduction. Let's start. I've got Tara on the left hand side of my screen. Tara, let's share with the group. Bring folks up to speed.
Sure. So I'm Tara Jackson. I work for Body Armor, which is the best sports drink out there. If you drink Gatorade, you are drinking your grandfather's sports drink, and you really should update it. I've been with the brand for almost 5 years now. Been an interesting journey. I joined when we were about $60 million in retail sales, and now we're a $1 billion brand. And a few weeks ago, we became the #2 brand in the U.S. and passed Powerade, and we'll pass Gatorade soon enough. So I manage all of our athlete partners. We have about 30 athlete partners, everyone from Naomi Osaka, James Harden, Mookie Betts, Mike Trout to, Jack Flaherty. So we have and Drew Lock in Denver. So we have a wide range of different partners, and also 4 of our properties. So we have US Open, UFC, Penske, and Western and Southern Open. So I pretty much manage everything except our MLS deal. I'm responsible for everything from negotiating the endorsement deal to papering the contract to managing the deals, building the relationships with the agents and the athletes, activating the partnerships by working internally with our cross-functional teams. And then when the time comes, getting them to renew, and hopefully not for that much more than we paid on the first contract.
How do you really feel, Tara? How do you really feel?
I mean,
yeah. I love it. And let's go to Ben Wang. Ben, let's bring folks up. How did you get to where you're at, and give us a little bit of background on what you're doing right now?
All right. Hey guys, Ben Wang, and I run the business intelligence department for the Saints and Pelicans, and the organization that our owner owns, including some other business like a car dealerships, car brewery. So, interesting breadth of different business types. But my main focus is definitely sports. In terms of analytics, the job is a lot less fun as what Tara's job is, but I kind of enjoy it. And I, just a little bit about my background. I'm a nerdy engineer to begin. about like, I don't know, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, I started as software engineer back in China. I kind of grow up in a, sports family. All my families love sports and watch sports since I did. So one day something just clicked in my head and I wanted to kind of, make a big detour of my career. So I worked for Beijing Olympic Games for a year, and then luckily I got into the best programs in the world. For me, for many of you as well, I believe. And in Athens, I kind of really enjoyed it. Everybody helped me a lot to adapt to the American life. And I was really lucky that Mike Millet, who was at the time, 10 years ago, was the executive director of business development at the ESPN Wide World Sports. And he came over and gave us a presentation. I really liked it. And I feel like I could learn a lot over there. So I told him I really want to work for the sports complex in Orlando. And he helped me get there. So I worked there for a year, kind of suspended my MSA for a little bit. And then I came back. Definitely appreciation to my classmate. He got a job early, so he gave me his GA, so I could keep going and just keep going with my MSA and keep in touch with Mike. Actually, he became my one of the best friend and a great mentor, and he also helped me. Introduced me to people at Columbus Crew. I got my first job there. And, as an international student, it's very nerve wracking because your visa situation, if you don't find a job or a company who want to support you, you have to go back. I was, again, lucky that, the OKC Thunder was looking for a manager of analytics, and I talked to Scott Loft there, and they would they would want to sponsor my visa application so I could stay. And then from there, changed to Arizona Coyotes for 3 years, working on business analytics, and then came over to Saints and Pelicans. And my department has about 8 people. We work with college like Tulane University to recruit interns as well, and we develop data. We aggregate information. We do storytelling, help business owners from different departments, sales, marketing, operations, to make a better decision. And also we help the sports side a little bit as well. We for both football and basketball, we do a lot of data integration, data management, creating business intelligence products. I would say, for example, a chart, a dashboard that automatically sends you notification, give you insights. That's kind of how I got here, and that's kind of overall what I do.
Thanks, Ben. Claire.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Matt, and everyone else. So I'm Claire Surratt Francis, and I'm the Senior Marketing Director for Bridgestone Arena and the Nashville Predators. And I oversee the advertising and promotions for all arena events and then anything team related. So we operate a little bit differently. We treat everyone as a Nashville Predators employee. So we really don't like to say in this presentation or in this panel, I will talk about arena side and team side, but we really don't say that internally. We are all Nashville Predators. So on the arena side, Bridgestone Arena is consistently nominated for Arena of the Year. We've won Polestar Arena of the Year several times. During, not during a pandemic, we have over 165 event days per year. So that's including our hockey dates, numerous concerts and events. And so I work directly with the promoters, so AEG, Live Nation, placing their advertising and promotions for all of the concerts and family shows that we host. And then for the team side, I'm putting together and overseeing the advertising and promotional plans for our ticket sales initiatives, number one, partnership activations, and our premium products, our guest experience, really anything that touches our brand and that leaves our building runs through our marketing department. So digital platforms, game presentation, actually. And my previous experience is with TNA Impact Wrestling. So I worked for Impact Wrestling after OU. That was my internship. So I was hired by my internship the next year. And I worked in marketing and licensing there, and then worked for Gigi's Cupcakes franchising. So I was in food marketing for a year, and then found my way in my current position. And this is my 4th season with Bridgestone Arena and the Preds, who are hopefully clinching a playoff spot tonight.
Love it. Love it. Let's stay with you. So from a takeaways from the MSA year, the second year, what can you say that some of the key takeaways you had from that last year, and how they benefited your career to date?
Yeah, so I think getting involved in a range of projects. So I was not hyper focused on one specific area, and it's okay if you're hyper focused on one specific realm, but it's also okay if you're not. It's just as important to find out what you don't want to do. And I was able to, witness and get involved in a few different projects. I did not want to get into ticket sales or partnerships, but those are the 2 departments that I support the most right now. I work with those departments just day in and day out. And it really benefits me, like knowing what they do and understanding their side of the business, and going into it. That's just a really good thing that helps you in your career. If your supervisor doesn't have to explain to you the importance of a revenue generating department when you are marketing, that's just really beneficial to know what other departmental goals are. So I would just encourage everyone, maybe you don't want to work in college athletics, but like we host the SEC men's and women's basketball tournament every year. And, I feel like I know a little bit about college athletics, and it's just been able to benefit me.
That's a good point. I think being curious and not pigeonholing yourself into one specific, and it's great if that's where where you're going to go and that's all that you want to do, great. Some people aren't fortunate to have that laser focus of exactly where they're going, and to have the curiosity and to be willing to learn new things only makes us better, right?
Definitely.
So Ben, you want to jump in?
Sure. I think in my second year for the MSA class, I think I really enjoyed that because it kind of gave me a lot of time to prepare for the storms. I was so nervous, and I was afraid of not having a job, potentially having to go back to China, and there's literally a lot of pressure. But after the Disney internship, having the second year gave me some time just to breathe. I think that was important, and using that time, I think I really figured out what I want to do in sports. Before I came, I know nothing about pretty much American sports besides some NBA stuff. Yao Ming was still playing, and I grew up watching a lot of basketball. But I was an engineer, but I didn't know how my skill could apply to any sports teams, even though I want to work in sports teams. But through that year, I think I took some time to do research online, primarily just, look at what people do in sports and what kind of technical skills could be applied in managing sports businesses. And I figure, hey, analytics or CRM or kind of digital marketing, anything that could be technical that I feel comfortable with, that's kind of thing could open the door for me. So I think that really worked well.
Yeah, well said. I envy you. I still don't know what I want to do. Tara, what would you say from steps that you took and the MSA
Yeah.
and how that's helped?
I'd say two things. There's the networking piece, which I don't have to go on because everyone knows about it, but not just networking with people outside and classmates and peers and alumni who came before you, but building relationships with the people in your class. So I was an MSA exclusive, and I don't know if they call it that anymore, but that means I was just there for the MSA year. I didn't do the MBA year as well. And there were quite a few of us in our class, and we used to have monthly dinners together. Rishi's amazing wife, Amanda, would cook for us every month. She was amazing, great cook. And those dinners were irreplaceable. Like, we had, not to say I don't have the bond with the rest of my classmates, but the bond that the MSA exclusive had together, we're so close. And it just stays to this day. I mean, just last weekend, I was calling Jose to pick his brain about something that I want to do with his agency around the NBA draft. And there's no one better, at least from me, from a buying side, to be able to call somebody on the sales side without a commitment of, I'm going to buy something, and just be able to pick their brain and say, hey, I just want to look into this, but I don't know if I have money to spend. I don't know if we want to do something. And I don't want to put it out there to someone else on your team and, have them hounding me about it. And then the other piece I'd say is really using my classwork and my special projects to build a portfolio for me. I mean, the great thing about the coursework at OU is that you can really kind of build special projects and projects within classes for yourself that really fit what you want to do when you leave OU. And then you can take those and you can apply them to real world. And when you're sending out your resume, you're not just sending out your resume, you're also sending out a portfolio of work. So you're talking to alumni and asking them to do projects for them so that you can apply it to your class and be able to have this portfolio of work that you can take with you on interviews and show that you don't just have the education, but you also have the real world applicable experience.
Yeah, and the portfolio goes a long way where you don't even know that you're putting one together.
Right,
and
right.
It's coming together as you complete projects. So
yeah.
Let's stay with you, Tara. So let me look at this. So there's a really good question. So aside from the pandemic, what are some current significant factors that are driving your marketing strategy and overall decision making?
Aside from having to do everything virtually, including production days, I would say, yeah, virtual production days, not fun over the last year.
I lived in that world. That's not doable virtual. That's hard. Wow.
It's doable. We did it, but it's not easy. But aside from that, I'd say finding more places where we can play in the cross section of sports and culture. So, there are a lot of redundancies in the audience within sports, and no one wants to say it, but it's true. We look at our UFC partnership and we look at our NASCAR partnership, and we're like, we are hitting a lot of the same people within those two partnerships. So where can we play along the edges of what else our athletes and partners are into, whether that's music or gaming or apparel or fashion or art, and reach new audiences with our existing marketing partners, or even beyond that, bring in new partners to the mix that aren't traditional for a sports drink. So, there's some interesting things we've done last year. We signed Carrie Underwood. We put James Harden in an ad with her. We currently have a program that we're running where we have an artist doing personalized body armor bottles where he's painting them with accolades that our athletes have hit, and then we're auctioning them off for charities. We did some content recently with a gaming partner with two of our athletes. So looking at the cross section of gaming and sports, and even kind of the basic wins, like partnering with Adidas and Donovan Mitchell to do a body armor exclusive colorway last year, which was a first for us, but also like a very cool basic program that gets a lot of traction from a cultural standpoint, we get a lot of cultural cachet from it.
Like that non-traditional, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, Claire, that's a good segue into your world. What would you say, from the pandemic, your current significant factors that are driving marketing strategy and decision making?
Somebody said it earlier, it's a little difficult to not think about that because like everything we're doing is because of the pandemic right now. But so speaking from the Nashville Predators organization, there are 3 things that we do that really drive our strategy. So first and foremost, we are all about gratitude. And hospitality. So we treat our season ticket citizens, first of all, we refer to them as season ticket citizens because they are citizens of Smashville. We bend over backward for them. And seriously, we go out of our way to just constantly thank them. But then we also, are constantly reminding them of hey, remember when we showed you our gratitude? So, that is something that has just been like instilled in our brand, just as a team, as a non-traditional hockey team, like we really do need to be thankful for our fans. And so even after all these years, we just continue to build on that. And it would be a lot easier sometimes to just remove that account and move on to someone from the wait list, which is, how a lot of teams operate. But we really go out of our way. So from, little things where if we have a drink spill, then we'll get their jersey dry cleaned and delivered to their office the next day or to their home the next day. To, whenever we say that we'll work with you on a payment plan, we really will work with people on payment plans. And we're able to offer a lot of flexibility so that we can retain people. So that's something that for sure drives our decision making, is coming from a place of gratitude. We start all of our email marketing messages of like, thank you. Our current renewal plan is it's not Smashville without you. And then also our youth development. So, here in Middle Tennessee, or really our territory, because we're in our TV market expands into Kentucky, Alabama, Tennessee. We understand the importance of introducing kids to our sport at a young age. And if you grow up here, then chances are you aren't already affiliated with an NHL team. So if the Nashville Predators can be the first people who get you on ice, or the first people to get you to play street hockey, then you're going to be a fan for life. A lot of us can attest to that. Like, you're fans of whatever NFL team your family grew up being a fan of. So really tapping into our youth programs, getting street hockey taught in all elementary through high school PE recreation classes. And then we brand all of that, so this program is brought to you by the Preds. If there's inventory, can we accommodate these groups at an upcoming game? You attend one game as a youth, like, you're going to be a fan for life. And then another strategy that we have is also kind of started just from being a new team, is really embracing the community. So we work so closely with our local legislators, statewide legislators. That's really helped us throughout the pandemic. Like, working so closely with the health department, just already having that relationship has really been beneficial. But then also, we knew it was important. A lot of people don't recognize hockey players, right? Like, they're really covered up. Sometimes their names are, not as easy to pronounce. So we started saying, like, hey, let's get out there, volunteer. So we really placed an emphasis on not only our players being out in the community, but all of our staff commits to 40 Hearts of Gold hours per season. So we're doing, and that hasn't stopped during the pandemic. We've been able to do it in specific pods so that we're not like cross-pollinating our pods. So it's really just showing that, hey, the Nashville Predators, because we almost had to leave Nashville. And so it's like, we want to be in Nashville. We are ingrained in this community. So we constantly want people to see our staff and our players out in the community giving back.
Was that something that came from the pandemic, or is that like the starting with gratitude, and has that been kind of within the DNA within your organization?
Yes, definitely been within the DNA, and just considered to, it's just continued to grow, especially during, like, we had a Christmas Day bombing here. We've had the tornadoes recently. So, like, unfortunately, we've had many opportunities to continue to give back. But that's something that was started whenever the team first came to Nashville, so that, we could find a way for people to realize, like, this team is here to stay. This team is here to benefit the community.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap things up a little bit. We're running a little bit long. So the last question, and let's stay with you here, Claire, on this. So what's the best advice you received that's helped you personally and professionally?
Okay, I'm going to call back to last symposium. So I don't know, whatever it was, not last symposium, but whenever Brian Gaynor was on the panel. So he said, so we were still, I guess, in school. I guess it was maybe his 5-year. And he was saying, like, look, I'm going to tell you, ask questions. Like, no, do not think that you are not as smart as everyone else, because other people in that room have questions. You go into so many things and you just, like, assume, I mean, maybe not everyone, but you assume that you don't know as much. But ask the questions. I mean, someone else has that question. Jose and I have talked about this before. Someone else has that question. If you don't understand, ask the question. If someone gives you grief for it, they're going to be in that position before. Now, like Bo said, be present. So don't just ask a question because you weren't paying attention. But don't assume that other people know what's going on, because
I like that. I remember that, actually. I remember him mentioning that, with just not being afraid to ask why.
Right.
Tara, what are your thoughts? What's a one kind of piece of advice that stuck with you?
Don't swirl forever. So I'm in a very strategy / activation / execution role. And one of the things that can easily be challenging when you work in cross-functional teams is the swirl, like just constantly trying to re-optimize an idea that may already be at its best and already be optimized. At some point, you gotta stop swirling. You gotta get the job done. You gotta get the business done. And I mean, there are always ways to make every project better. And you can postmortem things to death, but you can't let overanalyzing something stop you from getting the work done. And if you need to make an executive decision, just be confident in your decision, be able to justify your rationale in your decision, and make sure it's within budget. And if you can do those 3 things, most of the time you're not going to get fired for it. So, just don't get stuck in the swirl, and, get the work done, make a decision, get it executed.
That's very true. Some of the most efficient people that I know are some of the busiest. It's almost like if you want something to get done, give it to somebody who's busy, not to somebody who's not busy.
Yes.
Ben, what are your thoughts? What's a piece of advice that stuck with you over the years that's helped you professionally and personally?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this question. I think my answer is a little similar to Claire's. Long story short, this thing just stuck to me for so long until today that it goes back to our first O'Malley Cup when we played the class of 2010 in soccer. And just some background, I'm on average pretty much 4 or 5 years older than my classmates, and so 3 or 4 years older than the prior class. And I haven't played college soccer for 10 years, and I was pretty out of shape. But I was able to play that O'Malley Cup soccer game. And, I came from a culture, Chinese culture, Eastern Asian culture is you have to be humble humble and don't always show off. And just before the game, our classmates, David Carter, he's a college football player, really tall and fit and handsome. And he just pulled me aside. He said, "Hey, Ben, you know what? Don't be afraid of taking over." That thing, consider everything. And he said that to me, just really changed a lot of things, that how I think of my job, how I kind of interact with you guys, how I interact with people at jobs. So I'm pretty sure that's maybe it's only to me, but I really enjoyed that moment. And so thank you, David, if you are listening. So I hope I shared that advice to you guys too.
I love that.
That's good advice.
I love that. And I'm sure, I don't know if you'll remember, but I think my head is still ringing from getting smoked in the face by Bo with the shot at the end of the game. I don't know if you remember that, Doc, but you got me good.
I think we had the most O'Malley Cup injuries per capita that year. Like, there were a lot. Flag football was a lot of ER trips.
It was carnage. It was carnage because
Yes.
BA broke his foot. I got a concussion. Delgado had a skull fracture.
Yeah.
Jose pulled his hamstring.
Stino did too. Stino pulled his hamstring trying to think about it.
It was rough.
Injury.
I think Brooks broke his nose in softball that year too.
I did. I think Claire's mom was there telling me, "Brooks, you need to go to the hospital like right now."
Yeah, your nose was like
and his
this.
nose was like that.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes our side of the panel. I wanted to kick it over to Alex for some closing comments here.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we just wanted to end by thanking all of our panelists and also moderators for taking the time to talking to us tonight, and a friendly reminder to register for the rest of the symposium events the rest of the weekend. And yeah, look forward to seeing all you guys tomorrow and Friday. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.